Okay.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to episode 23 of Truth Hour. Give you a quick rundown. We're going to start off today thinking about some Black History Month. Well, not just some figures, but talking about Black History Month in general. Transition to a look at the HR 40, the House Resolution Bill on reparations, the Texas winter storm, United Flight 328. Talk about some negligent governors, Florida's governor, New York's governor, Texas governor. We'll finish up talking about some Black proverbs and how we got to that conversation. But before we start, I just wanted to say I hope I just watched the press conference with the sheriff from the Tiger Woods accident, and he is literally the only reason that my father and I watched golf together when I was growing up. So I'm very much hoping that he's okay. They've said that the extent of his injuries appear now to be related to his legs. Not that that's good, but I think that could be best case scenario considering what the wreckage looked like.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yes. Sorry. I'm trying to get things. All right. I'm going to set this here. Trying not to have my phone. Okay. Is this good?
There we go. So I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So it's February, and every year in February, we highlight Black History Month. And the reason that we are even fortunate to celebrate Black History Month is because of this individual, Mr. Carter G. Woodson. He's really considered the godfather of Black history, historian in his own right, and he was an advocate who fought for. First, it was Black History Week, and after decades, we finally arrived at having a Black History Month. And Carter G. Woodson is the reason that we ultimately got to a place where the country can recognize the contributions of Black people across industries, not just entertainers, right? Because we think of Black people and the contributions they had to music and art, but also we oftentimes forget what Black scientists have done, and doctors, and like lawyers and judges
in general. Yeah.
So we just wanted to recognize. I'm going to talk about a few people that I've highlighted on the website this year. And if you're unfamiliar, I'll put the link up here. You can always just go to masonreport.com/Black History Month. And there's like an archive of all the people that we've covered dating back to 2016, I think. So for the past five years. So it's a nice little archive up there of folks. If you've always been interested in learning some Black history, go there, because it's going to take you beyond Dr. King and Rosa Parks, right? Frederick Douglass. It's going to really talk about some cool people and stories that you might not be aware of. It talks about the origin of kind of the historically Black colleges and universities, if you weren't familiar with that. So I would say check that out, masonreport.com/Black History. Another person I wanted to highlight before we move on, Marsha P Johnson, self-identified drag queen, activist for the LGBTQ plus community. And if you're familiar with the Stonewall Uprising, I mean, talk about a hero in that story. Marsha P Johnson is a name that folks should remember. Before I highlight the last two people, I didn't know if you wanted to jump in.
All I wanted to add in is that the Black History Month content has stayed on the website since the start of Mason Report. So I just want people to know that this isn't something that is done just for this one moment, but that the content actually lives there. Because you shouldn't have to wait until 1 month out of the year to educate yourself. So we all have learning to do. So just want to encourage.
Fully agreed. Yeah, if you want to learn this stuff, it's there for you. It's available. You don't have to wait until February to learn the name.
I mean, like, case in point. Oh,
Mhm.
I'll just add, like, case in point. We last week, Cliff and I, we covered Judas and the Black Messiah, and we talked about the things that I know on the side. Cliff and I had discussed some new things that we learned about the Black Panther Party, especially the group, the chapter of Chicago, and just not knowing for myself, not knowing all that history, I was shocked. So that's what I'm saying. It's very important to just continue to do more research, the names that we always hear about and that are covered in schools.
And if you want to read specifically about some of the founders of that movement, you can MaceReport.com/Black History Month/Huey P. Newton. I covered him, talked about Huey Newton's from Oakland, California. He was one of the founders, him and Bobby Seale, of the Black Panther Party. And so that's been on the website now for about 2 or 3 years. A lot of Black homes have posters of Huey Newton. He was oftentimes considered a radical. And so I think he kind of embraced that term. If it's radical to think that children should be fed, if it's radical to think that healthcare should be provided to those who don't have it, if it's radical to think that we would have equality. So that's who the Black Panther Party was. But again, these are things that you shouldn't have to wait until February to learn. All right, last person before we move on, because as a law school grad, this is a person that I've always found just to have a fascinating history and kind of admired. Constance Baker Motley. And I wish I put the names of these people up. Constance Baker Motley. And sorry about that.
Mm-hmm. And you guys can feel free to comment.
Constance Baker Motley is the first Black woman to serve as a federal judge. And the first Black woman to serve in New York State Senate, first Black woman to argue a case before the United States Supreme Court, the first woman to be a Manhattan borough president, and the first Black woman accepted into Columbia Law School. So it's a lot of firsts. Wow. That's a lot of accomplishments. Constance Baker Motley. So as a law grad, this is a person that I think a lot of folks should admire, not just Black grads, but as a person I definitely admired, considering all of the great success that she went on to have.
That's pretty cool.
All right. So I want to transition. It is Black History Month, and oftentimes in history classes, I think this can get missed, this conversation about reparations and what do reparations look like? What will be the cost inevitably? Who should they go to? It was so long ago. The anti-reparation movement is, well, I didn't own people that were enslaved. My parents didn't own people that were enslaved. And it's like, okay, but you're still benefiting, right? You're still reaping the benefits of that system that was in place for hundreds of years. And so HR 40 is commissioned to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans Act. It's a study. This is a bill that would allocate some funds to conduct a study. And that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the bottom line. They're just asking if they can actually do the research, and it's been a lot of pushback just from simply saying that they would like to have federal funding to research. And again, this would still go through the same process as any other bill. So they would hold hearings. They would have a certain amount of time to conduct the hearings, the research, pull in different experts on both sides. So it's not as if this is something that is happening outside of the normal process, but it's interesting to see the remarks from different congressional members, and then even the way that it's being covered, or not being covered, I should say, by the media. So there have been a lot of groups that have spoken out in support of reparations. This bill has been brought to the floor for more than 2 decades. So I believe it was initially introduced on the House floor in 1989. And while Sheila Jackson Lee, who is a member of Texas, she represents the Houston area, she's been the main congressional member to bring forth the bill in each session. So the bill has been, they've tried to bring the bill, introduce it, but there hasn't been much movement. I believe in 2019, in the last Congress, they actually were able to, again, introduce the bill. They were trying to, again, receive support so that they actually would be able to hold a vote. And it looks like I'm breaking up, so let me see what I can do.
Yeah, and before I read the second half of this bill, I'm going to give my own review of reparations and what I think makes the most sense. What I think is lost oftentimes in this debate, whether it should be a debate or not is debatable. What I think is lost is the importance of understanding the long-term deleterious effect of slavery, right? It's not just like, okay, there was an emancipation and then there was a 13th Amendment and everything was great, right? That's not what happened. What we have was, after the ending of the Civil War, you have a president who is fully supportive of Reconstruction get assassinated. So that means we go decades, right, of failed Reconstruction. And then you have pretty much the Klan running the country. You have supremacist policies with Jim Crow, right? You have all of this oppression, which hence, if people are wondering, it's like, well, wait a minute, you got the 13th and the 14th Amendment. What are you complaining about? Well, we wouldn't have needed a Civil Rights Act if there weren't issues, right? We wouldn't have needed a Voting Rights Act if the 15th Amendment actually gave people the right to vote. So you have these past transgressions that are having modern day implications. And that's the reason that this commission would need to be established. So the bill establishes the commission to study and develop reparation proposals. That's what it does. Right. Proposals. Because people say, well, we can't just give you money. I'm not going to get into that because there were folks there was all kinds of folks in this country who have been given money. But that you drinking the tea is the perfect timing.
I know.
Indigenous folks have received actual monetary reparations. There's been Asian Americans after internment who, and deservedly so, have received reparations, right?
And so I just
in different forms. It's just it's just descendants of enslaved Africans in this country who have never received any form of reparations for those centuries of transgressions and building this country. Right. There is no United States of America if not for enslaved Africans, period. And so the idea that reparations are somehow unreasonable as an expectation, to me, it's like, well, we can't really have a meaningful dialogue if you don't think that descendants of these people are deserving of any type of compensation.
And I would just say that in light of everything that happened in the past year and where we've been in terms of welcoming the conversation about systemic racism, to me, this is the time, right, to allow them to allow this bill to pass so that they can perform the research and put together proposals so that we're really attacking the issue of systemic racism. Because in part, this is the reason why this, like you mentioned, the structure and the way things are built into the systems is because of the lack of support that was received. And so I know that it's definitely a history lesson. And you said it earlier, Cliff, that the way that it's taught, I think that there's a lot of holes, right? Because I think they only address one part, but no one talks about of not being given what was promised to, like what was not promised to them. It's still breaking up.
I forgot to put the image up now that I'm thinking about it. If you read the sign, 40 acres and a mule, right? That never happened. And it's not just that 40 acres and a mule during Reconstruction didn't happen. It's that there was actual redlining and a prohibition by the federal government. This isn't just local, because people love to try to blame the South for stuff. And it's like the South has actually figured some of this stuff out. People love to blame the South. It's like, oh, no, it's just racism in that little pocket. This is policy. The federal government restricted access for Black families to purchase homes all across the country. And everyone knows home ownership is the foundation oftentimes of being able to build generational wealth. And that's the reason that Black families haven't had opportunity to build generational wealth, because of that lack of access. Not just with if you don't understand the history of redlining, please read a book.
The Color of Law is a good one to start with.
You said that on purpose. Bam.
Cliff can show you. Prime example. That, and then I would also challenge people as well. Like if you are having a hard time conceptualizing what we're describing, then I'm not trying to throw to all of these books, but then reading the book Cast, because that talks about how everything has been built into every system or every structure that we have here in this country, and why everyone why a lot of people, I will not say everyone, but why there are a lot of people that are in support of actually finding solutions, rather than just saying, oh, our company would like to address systemic racism or racial inequality. Because that's why I'm saying that this is the time. So again, just how I don't know what will happen. I hope we'll have a different outcome than what we saw a few weeks ago with the impeachment trials. But again, this will be another tale of who we are as a country with how they vote.
To vote against a study. I think that's a lot, but we have to.
But when you think about gun control,
that's where I was going to go.
Yeah,
when you against studying the impact and the actual data of like the data associated with gun violence. So if they'll vote against that, considering this gun violence epidemic we're experiencing in this country, they'll vote against. Of course, they'll vote against the bill commissioning a team to research reparations. So I wouldn't hold my breath that this is going to pass, but I think it's important for it to remain on the floor until there's sufficient majorities in both chambers to pass this type of legislation.
I agree. Well,
all right. Well, Shonda this is I think touched you personally because you have roots in the state of Texas.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the state of Texas had a pretty bad past couple of weeks as a result of kind of a rare winter storm that brought the state to its knees, really. And that's from a number of factors. And we're going to talk today about the not just the failed leadership, but the greed of the decisions of the leaders, and how they get to a point where a state experiences a weather event that leads to kind of catastrophic power failures.
Yeah. And other people suffering because of the greed and those decisions that were made that did not take people into consideration. So
Governor,
last week, this is
Governor Abbott, Texas governor, and he kind of followed in the mold of former Governor Rick Perry, in eliminating. Sorry, you're breaking the other one. Yeah, I have no audio for you. You're frozen on IG.
I'm good over here.
Taking on the mold of kind of the conservative rhetoric of no government, right? Free for all, libertarian, right? And to the extreme point where there was a removal of Texas from the national power grid. Why? Because they want to privatize everything. And privatization is fine and well and good to me in certain industries. It shouldn't be when we're talking about things that should be offered for public consumption that could have life and death implications, right? So the privatization of the power grid was dumb, period. And we see the effect of it, because when you remove the state from the national power grid and you put all the power in the hands of one company, right? I think it was the ECRB, into one organization, and that organization they can't handle this type of weather event. Then what happens? Then you have millions of people out of power, and so it leads to death, it leads to illness, it leads to very dangerous conditions that oftentimes we say that they probably should have been avoided. In this instance, we can actually say unequivocally it could have been avoided.
Right.
And it would have been avoided, but for the greed of privatizing just to make a buck for one corporation, because they probably wrote a bigger campaign check than the poor people that voted for him against their own best interest.
Right. It's that, and then failing to understand the way that failing to admit that yeah, I hear that. Sorry. We're just trying to get all of our stuff in line. Is it good now?
It's rough. I don't know no one's commenting on Facebook. I don't know how they hear it.
Oh, so my
it's
end,
rough for me.
I was gonna say you're choppy on my end, but
that's not good.
So I don't know, but we're gonna keep going. Okay.
Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah. So over the past few years, prior to Donald Trump, so I would say in the last 10 years, you've seen a lot of Republicans from not just the state of Texas, but in other states, deny global warming, deny climate change. You're shaking your head. Is it still breaking up? Okay, I'll continue. But you've just seen, it's just been a constant issue to where they've adopted these talking points that are very.
I can't hear anything at this point.
You can't hear anything?
No.
Really? Oh.
I heard really. Sorry.
Oh. Okay. I don't know. I don't know what's happening. Is there anyone in the comments?
Shannon said to go by the window.
To go by the window? I'm already by the window. Yeah. I don't know.
A different setup. I didn't even make that connection.
Yeah.
It's all right now. I'd say try it again, and I'll just copy it. I say keep going with your thought. I was going to get talking to the relief efforts, but you can.
Yeah, but no, I guess the only point I'm so long they've been on this wave, this ride of denying that global warming is happening. They've seen the data, they refuse to acknowledge it or accept it, and this is where and this is where we are, right? It's almost they're still trying to say that this is what fake news, but we have science and we have data to show that it's here, it's happening. I don't understand why we continue to go through this. We also saw it wasn't this large scale, but there were a few years ago, I want to say 2-3 years ago, when the governor of Georgia didn't respond well when they knew that there was snow coming to their state, and there were people stuck on the highway for over a day or two. I don't know if you remember that. You're looking, no, you don't remember that. But again, it's just one of those things where it's and having people it's still breaking up. Sorry.
I'll pick up talking about the relief efforts and you join in. So you have Texans could actually look outside of Texas for leadership in their state, because sadly, and Shauna's going to rejoin us for folks on IG. She's going to come back. Sadly, you don't have Texas leaders stepping up, right? We know what Texas leaders did. Leaders, I use the term loosely, referring to this person who left the state, right? He fled after his power went off, and they had no heat. He had the resources to just leave, as opposed to thinking about the other citizens of the great state of Texas. And sadly, that's what you get. And so you had New York House Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who at this point, initially it was $2 million, by this point has raised $5 million for Texas citizens. And that's impressive. It's not just impressive because it's not the state that she's from, but the fact that she was able to accomplish that in less than a week because people needed it. And that's what we're talking about. You had Beto O'Rourke, right, who is a former, again, another congressman, not currently serving. He ran for Ted Cruz's Senate seat 4 years back and lost, but he's another person. He's helping to gather water and food, and also has raised some money. Not as raised as much as AOC, but I think Beto was able to raise around $2 million.
Right,
so
I believe
you have these other public officials.
Right. And the thing that's interesting, go ahead. Can you hear me?
Okay.
I don't know what's happening. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm just adding in that what's interesting is that even though he left public office, he still continued to show up and organize, like within, like for the state and just for the party in general.
Should I disconnect from IG and send folks to YouTube?
I'm just staying here. I'm just not going to do that.
So if you're on,
you can continue.
What? They don't want to just hear me, because they won't be able to see you. They only hear you.
I don't know what's going on.
Head over to YouTube or to Facebook or Periscope if you're on Twitter to watch us there. Mesa Report, or so youtube.com/C/Mesa Report. Don't ask me about the C's. But head over there so you can check us out. Sorry about the audio issues. All right. Well, then I'm going to take these out of my ear.
Yeah. I didn't want it to keep breaking up. I don't know.
This is much preferred. You don't know what I was listening to. It was bad. But now now everything. This is good. Okay.
So the only point I was trying to make with Beto O'Rourke is that he's one of those people that he really cares about the people. And I mean, he organized what he did during the 2020 election. He organized to have more than 1 million people make calls to Texas voters, and he was able to get other people from other states, some celebrities, not all celebrities, but a lot of here in phone bank. And that's a big deal because a lot of people do not enjoy making phone calls, but it's really important, especially during this previous election when you weren't able to go door knocking. So I really just want to pin that. And then also the same for both Beto and Julian Castro, they both ran for president in 2020. And again, Julian Castro is the same. He's well beloved in the state of Texas, especially for those that are from San Antonio. He's done a lot of work as well. And him and Beto O'Rourke, they have been doing a lot. In terms of members in the state of Texas, I give them all of their props for how they've shown up, because I can't say the same for everyone. All the members of Congress, it's a pretty big delegation. So I just really want to acknowledge what they're doing to motivate people to support relief efforts.
It was a moment, but it's good.
You gave me this look.
It was because it happened again, but it was momentary. It's fine.
Okay. Yeah. But go ahead.
No,
I just wanted to make sure we acknowledge them.
I think that's true. I'm glad you did that because AOC and Beto probably get the most coverage because they're kind of big, flashy names. Well, heck, when you raise $5 million in 4 days, I mean, I think that is worthy of the praise that AOC has gotten, but also the idea that she's such like political rivals with the actual elected officials in the state of Texas, and that she would do this for Texans. That I think that's kind of also worthy of note.
And I also want to note too is that so there were other people, which this is what's interesting. There were most of them Republicans that wanted to then throw her under the bus for her Green New Deal. So then they made it political instead of saying, "Hey, let's find ways to actually support people that are suffering in Texas."
Yes,
the rhetoric that we were hearing from them should be alarming, and people should be frustrated in that sense. Instead, what she did is she didn't go on Twitter and she didn't go to the media and start talking about her bill. Instead, she organized and raised more than $5 million to help support people that are in need.
You know, you reminded me, I forgot about that nonsensical rhetoric from the top, even from people like the governor of the state, lying on camera, saying that the power failures were somehow connected to renewable energy. I totally forgot that he said this on tape. And then you had other people joining in. So this misinformation campaign, we just had a president occupying the White House for 4 years prior to January 20, 2021, who was, I think, the poster child of misinformation. And it's intentional because you can confuse people that lack the requisite information and education to think better for themselves, right? And so you can convince, I'm not gonna call them dumb, I'm just gonna say that they're less informed. You can convince less informed people of nonsense things because they don't have the adequate information to dispel any of those notions. So when he goes on the news and says, well, the power failure is a result of renewable energy, now you have people thinking we got to live by oil. It's got to be coal and gas or else. What? It was so out of like touch of reality, but it survived a couple news cycles because Texas, right? Like, because that's what the Republican Party is. And so you mentioned today, I hope people have had time to go to C-SPAN, check out C-SPAN and watch these confirmation hearings. I can't be the only one fascinated by these question and answer sessions, but there's a woman who's potentially not going to be confirmed as the next Secretary of the Department of the Interior because she tweeted, Republicans don't believe in science. What? That's not controversial based on how they vote on legislation, based on how they vote about global warming, based on their response to climate change scientists. If your response to a winter storm is, well, I thought there was global warming, you don't believe in science. So
and they also can check the vote. They can check the voting record.
I mean, she tweeted, Republicans don't believe in science. And now you have people like Joe Manchin saying that they could potentially not vote to confirm her. He needs to leave the party.
Right. I was going to say, he's already another problem. he's an issue.
I don't know why they didn't strip him of his. Why is he chairing a committee? I don't know why they're trying to appease this man. Get him out of there. They should have stripped him of his committee duties to send a message that you either are on board or you're just going to be a member of Congress who doesn't have any power. Why are they letting this man chair a committee? I don't know, but I'm not going to use too much.
Let's not go.
Joe Manchin. I also don't know if I should talk about the flight while angry thinking about Joe Manchin. That's fine. So we saw this weekend United Flight 328 departing Denver en route to Honolulu, Denver, Colorado, en route to Honolulu, Hawaii, suffered right engine failure. I'm going to show some images as I read the notes from the apologies. Where am I? from the NTSB, right, the National Transportation Safety Board, discussing, and this is an image that kind of really shook me. This ring here typically would cover this engine, and this fell from the plane onto the front yard of this home in Brentwood. And it's insane to me to think that there were 241 people aboard this plane, no injuries. Forget casualties, no injuries. I think that's something special to think about. But so we got an update. The NTSB says that they believe that metal fatigue played a role in the engine explosion, right? So, and I'm thinking metal fatigue. What does that? I just saw your face before I put the image up. What, metal fatigue?
I don't.
What?
Yeah, that's exactly how I'm looking, and I also do not know enough.
I'm no scientist, but
yeah,
are there stronger substances like that we know of than metal? Don't we use like what? Isn't metal what reinforces everything?
Where did that come from?
This is the National Transportation Safety Board. This is NTSB. Metal played a role in the engine explosion on United Airlines Flight 328. The explosion sent debris falling onto Broomfield neighborhoods.
So if we can't trust this compound,
metal.
Metal.
If any kid has been in a monkey bar set, that's metal. If you're on a swing set, those chains, that's metal. If you're driving in a car, that's metal. Well, some of them are mostly plastic now, but it used to be metal. I'll finish it. NTSB Chairman Robert Sumwalt says that there was a loud bang and vibrations coming from engine number 2 about 4 minutes after takeoff from Denver International. The plane was about 12,000 feet above homes. 2 blades in the engine broke, one fractured at the base where it meets the hub, and the second fractured about midway. And he says the first blade caused an overload damage to the second blade. And one of those blades was found on a soccer field in Broomfield, Colorado. And so Japan has, and I think we should have prefaced this because you acknowledged this a couple of days ago when we filmed the preview. This was on that jet airplane made by Boeing that experienced issues 2 years ago. If you guys remember the grounding of the 777. So this is a Boeing 777. You can get a better look here. This is a Boeing 777 in that same fleet, right, with the same line of planes as like the 47, the 57, the 37. The Boeing 777 has had various issues, and Japan is really the first country to come out and say, this thing is not flying in this country. So Japan has grounded 777s, and you have different airlines in this country, or not. I think United was the only one that flew this particular model. This was a 777-200 because there's a 777-300. And so they decided to ground them. But I'm thinking if they already knew these planes had, various issues, why are they flying? Metal fatigue sounds like the most odd euphemism for, oh, we effed up. What is metal fatigue? I've honestly never heard that characteristic of earlier when I was printing my notes, I was like, what? Did they really say that? The NTSB metal fatigue? They're gonna need to give me something better than that. I want a whole report. So I'm looking forward to reading that. You want to know about things that keep me up at night? Metal fatigue caused engine failure on an airplane. What? Am I crazy? Metal fatigue? I don't see anybody in the comments. This can't just be me. I am certain of that.
I need to see more of the report, so I'll wait to see what other findings. Because that's pretty scary. You think about you're on a plane and for something like that to happen. I mean, I don't know. Mm-hmm. No, I'm just going to add, to be on the plane and to hear all of that. I mean, that's some heavy material flying off the aircraft.
Yes.
While you're trying to land. So,
I mean, look at this thing. This is the size of half
that it missed that person's house
by 10 feet. This would have went through. And then I don't know
If
people have seen images. If people have seen images, I mean, there were folks who had, holes in their roofs from other debris. I mean, we're talking like a super wide debris field from this explosion. And
exactly.
It's interesting. We had talked about this before, and folks are wondering, well, wait a minute, 241 people aboard, that sounds like a lot, but actually, how many? Do you remember how many people this type of jet could actually hold? Because under normal circumstances, in a 2-class system, the jet can hold 440 people, 450 people, because obviously they make more room for people in like the business or the first class. In a 1-class system like Southwest Airlines, right? You just walk on, it's all the same. It can seat upwards of 520 people. So we're fortunate that we are under these like circumstances where airlines have to create more room in between, right, to ensure safety, like safe social distancing. And that's why it was really at half capacity. And so who knows how that engine would have been able to maintain until landing if it had full capacity. So 241 people versus 450 people. That could have probably made a difference. We don't know. Jet engines are fascinating to me, though. My dad, when he left the Marines, worked at McDonnell Douglas. For those old enough to remember, before there was a Boeing, there was a McDonnell Douglas, and my dad worked for McDonnell Douglas. I've always been fascinated, him too, with just jet engines. Because, and I'm no engineer. Math has never been my strength; it never will be. But if you've seen one like up close, it's like holy smokes. And I've seen one once in a hangar, visiting like a base with school, and so they're impressive pieces of like engineering marvel.
Well,
oh, sorry, the governors. It's time for the governors.
Yes. So last week,
you pick the state. You pick the state. I'll put them up and put the pictures up.
Okay. So again, because we want to be fair and to call people out where there is wrongdoing, we're going to talk about 3 governors. So the first state, let's talk about Florida. Governor DeSantis. So last week there were a few reports that were ran, just discussing how first Florida, they've been in the news over the last few months just because of the governor's lack of handling COVID, and the way just they've been very lax with the COVID restrictions. Just recently, they've had long lines of people waiting for vaccinations. Well, it turns out that the governor, he actually set up drive-in situations, like drive-ins for vaccinations, but only in wealthy communities. And these aren't in the communities that are filled with numbers of individuals who are considered high risk, or again, in those wealthy communities, they're not near populations of people that are high risk or minorities. And so he's facing now, there's a report that was sent to the DOJ by a congressional member, Charlie Crist, and he's asking the DOJ to open up an investigation. And they began to, so he's one person, and I'm sure there's others within the state that have called him out for his, this has happened too much, just for the way he's handling COVID, and again, putting profits before people. What do you want to add anything to this?
Two quick things. It throughout the entire pandemic, you have DeSantis really kind of rubbing elbows with the past administration, and their anti-mask wearing, their anti-vigilance Made a whole new word up. They're anti-like vigilance when it comes to protecting folks against this deadly virus. And there's a reason that when there was an explosion of cases in Florida, it didn't really surprise us because you had people still going down there to spring break, and he wouldn't shut down the beaches. If you remember that, he wouldn't shut down the beaches, wouldn't tell kids to stop gathering.
Oh yeah.
Still, I mean, so he's been an irresponsible governor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh no, I was just gonna say he wasn't forcing those establishments to close early at all either.
No, I mean, he's been an irresponsible governor throughout the pandemic, and so now it's like you combine his irresponsibility as a failed leader, and you combine that with he's endangering the folks by not granting access to the people most impacted by COVID, by essentially restricting their opportunity to get inoculated, by prioritizing the people least in a situation where they would be affected by COVID. Is just the height of corruption and really just evil intent. Because what are you really saying about these vulnerable, marginalized communities? I don't care about you. You're not writing checks for my campaign. You die, you die. And that's really the only way that we can interpret this. And the last thing I was going to say is, I love that it was Charlie Crist that is sending that filed for an investigation. Folks don't remember. Charlie Crist was a governor of Florida. The party turned on him because he was willing to speak truth to power. I'm pretty sure he switched parties, right? Is Charlie Crist either?
He did. Yes, he's a Democrat. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he switched parties. Yeah,
governor of Florida. I repeat, Charlie Crist, who's filing for a report, an investigation to be done about what Governor DeSantis did with prioritizing these wealthy people for the vaccine, is a former Republican governor. So there are some out there. Don't think that, I'm not going to watch Truth Hour. All I do is bash Republicans. No. Because, we love Mitt Romney on this show. Well, I do.
Yeah.
So half of us love Mitt Romney on this show. It's not about bashing Republicans. It's about bashing people who do bad things, like Ted Cruz being cowardly and leaving his state in the lurch at their most vulnerable, at their worst point, really. I won't say worst in state history, but it's been pretty bad. That was the worst that they've seen in a long time.
Right. And that's what I would say too. That's one thing you can count on. We are on the same page when it comes to Ted Cruz. We agree on Ted Cruz. We agree there. I agree with some of his policies, but we're not going to use this time right now because we're not bashing him. I don't want people to think that we're bashing Mitt Romney in this portion. We're talking about some of the others. Also, what I will add in about what the situation in Florida is that they created a VIP list. Okay, Florida has a high population of seniors. So why they have this VIP list, I do not understand why you have seniors standing in line 12 hours to receive a vaccination. People should be appalled, and they should want a better situation in terms of the vaccine handling, because right now they're so
fully agree.
They definitely should be seeking solutions. And then we can move to the next governor.
New York.
I guess so. Then let's talk about Texas. So Governor Abbott for the state of Texas. He's another one. Definitely has mishandled COVID as well. He at some point they have the data. They'll make a smart and calculated decision to protect people, and then when we had the prior administration, they have discussions with them, and then they pull back some of the restrictions. And in fact, I mean, they haven't been able to lower their curve in the state of Texas as well, especially in certain cities like El Paso, and other communities.
High Latinx populations.
Yep. And I know in part that the reason why El Paso, or the way that it's being covered, is to misinform people is because it is a high Latinx population. Because I think if it was a different group of individuals, it would be looked at differently.
This happens in the country. It's the same with Flint. If Flint was occupied by white people, their pipes wouldn't be poisoning their kids with lead for almost 10 years now. This is only a problem in communities of color that this type of stuff happens.
Yeah. So what happened this past week really is because of ignorance. Someone unwilling to admit that they didn't want to listen to the experts. That's what this is. And then again, it's failing to prepare people for a natural disaster, because we've seen this also happen when we've had hurricanes. So again, there will be an investigation, and people will remember. They'll remember.
It sounds like what you're saying is Texas voters will remember and make him pay for it at the ballot box.
Right. Because of
I'm not so sure.
I'm will remember. Now, I said I know which voters will remember.
Yeah, but is there enough
people that showed up? Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Is it enough? So in some way, I don't know, because depending on how long people experience this devastation, then you never know how people will react in the next election.
People extremely affected by this will definitely make Republicans pay for it, but people not directly impacted by that, probably not be as motivated. This will not have as significant an effect on the next major election in Texas for folks not impacted. And the same is true, I think. Yeah, we talked about this on the show. Again, I think the biggest reason, right? I think the overwhelming reason that Trump was not reelected is because of his failure to address the COVID-19 global pandemic. And he didn't adequately protect Americans from the lethality of this disease. And he lied about understanding the lethality of this disease. Yeah,
exactly. And that's the bottom line here, is that people continue to lie. They're lying. They're deliberately lying to people, and
But the problem is the difference with a presidential campaign versus Abbott or one of like Ted Cruz. You're not going to have the national media's apparatus available to Texans to make this decision. Whereas running for president, you can't run and hide. There was too much data coming from all around the world about the lethality of this disease. Right. So Trump couldn't hide from that. Well, and so when the Bob Woodward tapes came out and he's saying on tape, hey, this thing is deadly. This thing is deadly. Then you can't hide from that. Didn't help. I think Abbott has a little different situation trying to hide from it.
Yeah. And I'll let you take the last one.
Oh, this is okay. Why you do that to me? We've got Governor Cuomo. And don't think that I picked these pictures like to make these people look crazy. This is their face. I can't, people have their faces. That's just what it is. It's not what I literally, anybody can find these.
I didn't say anything.
He looks patriotic. He's in front of a flag. Anyhow, now I'm correcting myself. So Governor Cuomo, really, in Governor Newsom in California, Governor Cuomo in New York was looked at as the standard for how governors ought to respond to this COVID crisis. Yeah. He was making daily briefings. He was giving daily briefings before the press. We thought he was being so transparent, working with his Department of Health in the state of New York and disseminating that information to the press and all the necessary stakeholders. We thought that Governor Cuomo was doing everything right. But then
he literally he set he really set the benchmark.
we thought he was setting the benchmark.
Yeah, we thought he was. I know.
And
I'm
then
just
we
saying,
heard
yeah.
this past week that he was actually cooking the books. Governor Cuomo had actually lied about the actual number of people dying in retirement homes. And when asked why, the justification was, we assumed the Trump administration was going to punish us. And so in order to protect New Yorkers, we had to change these numbers to not make it seem as if retirement homes were actually doing as poorly as they were.
Yeah,
That's not an excuse for.
It isn't. And since when have you guys been afraid of Trump? The same people that, I'm sorry, didn't you create legal? You blocked him from having certain businesses in your state. So no, either way, it's not an excuse, but it's just, again, when people begin to have these excuses, just own it and just say what you did. You've been caught.
So this is the thing. I don't know if he can just. We didn't talk about this on the weekend when we were prepping the show.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he should keep his job? Oh. Yeah, I know I put you on the spot.
So in this, yeah, I'm like, I
don't know if he should keep his job.
I know.
He might need to step down. This is pretty, and this is a dim, and everyone knows I lean for the most part to the left, right? I'm pretty middle left. As much as I love him, I think he might step down.
It's pretty egregious.
The reason I say this for folks who are watching, might replay. Well, sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, I'm saying it's pretty egregious, and honestly, it sends the wrong message. If you do nothing and you just allow him to leave with that excuse, it sets the wrong tone when we're actually trying to reform the way that people look at government and those who govern it.
Yeah, I think public officials should be held to a higher standard. And people are going to say, well, I thought you were a constitutional scholar. You know that they're not held to a difference. Like, yeah, I know that. But should we not expect better of the people we elect to represent us? We are in a constitutional republic. We only get one vote for one person to represent our voice. And if the person representing our voice voids the public trust or breaks this public trust, I think it is time for that individual who no longer represents my voice to step down because they violated that public trust. That's my view. And I'm a person who's been supportive of Cuomo. I love the Cuomo family. If you guys don't know, their father was actually a really high-ranking public official. The brother is on CNN. I think it's an amazing family. They do amazing work. They have big hearts. This was wrong. He needs to step down.
Right. So I will say too, yes, this was wrong, but I will also say, I'm not saying that just from one act that someone should have to step down. So we need to see more of the full picture. I'm just saying, because to say that from one person having
it depends on what the one act is.
That's what I'm getting at. Yes, it depends on what the act is. We have to be careful because we're just saying like, oh, if they commit a wrongdoing, then they should step down. No, you
splash a puddle on a little splash a puddle on somebody. Like, oh, that's one thing. Okay. You lied to the nation about how many people are dying in a certain area. No, that ain't.
And I think too, because he's still in those briefings every day. I'll admit, I was watching those briefings.
Lying to our face.
I know. Okay. All right. We only have 1 minute.
This is true.
We haven't even been able to talk about the Black Proverbs.
Oh, let's get them in. Oh, that's more than a minute though, isn't it?
It is. Okay, so we'll come back next week to talk about the Black Proverbs, you guys.
If y'all think about some of the sayings you heard from your parents growing up, to you, I did ask my dad, so I do have an answer to my question that I told you. I'm wondering why he had that, what I thought was an extreme reaction. I actually think he's watching. asked me for the link yesterday, so he might be watching. I asked him, so I do have an answer. So for folks curious, we got some Black proverbs. I got a crazy story from high school, and I got an answer from my dad on his reaction to finding something. So yeah, it's gonna be fun. Join us next week to hear about Black proverbs.
We'll see you guys next week. We apologize for the technical delays, difficulties. We'll get it fixed. See you next week.